Hey guys, welcome back. Today we'll be doing another episode of Airsoft Tech Talk Q&A. So let's just jump straight into the questions and waste no time. WM asks, when is the TSG vid coming out? The answer is very soon. I actually have the TSG gear in hand and ready to go to be installed into the project gun, but really the thing I'm waiting for is all the parts. And some of the parts that I'm using are going to take a while to get here, thinking like early to mid-December. So what I'm going to do instead of making just one big TSG video, I'm going to make a series, probably 3 to 4, maybe at the most 5 videos for the whole TSG build project. I figured that'd be more digestible and more interesting for you guys, and plus I could actually get the content out slowly as opposed to just making a big content dump on it all at once in one 20-minute long video, which would have some trouble getting and garnishing enough views. So this way, if I make small videos as I go, building the project, then it'll get more views and people will be more interested in it. So that is the plan as of now. I expect the first TSG video to actually drop next week sometime. So keep an eye out for it. Drayton Winkler asks, I know it's not exactly your area of expertise, but have you ever heard of an RHop not being recommended for an HPA system? So this is actually the first time I've been asked this question or even heard of this concept of RHops just not working well in HPA rigs due to some high pressure system kind of voiding the whole concept of the RHop and making it useless in that build. So, you know, I'm not saying I know everything here, but I used to do RHop, drop-in RHop barrel and hop-up chamber setups for people, you know, a couple years ago. I made probably 50, 60, 70 of them total, and I got a little bit of negative feedback on a couple of them, but they were just, you know, blatantly were truly my fault, and I got the problem corrected. And I know I sold some to people using HPA rigs, and I know that they told me that they performed very well. So I've not heard of this concept. Maybe it exists due to another variable that the person seeing the effect isn't aware of. So, you know, I'm saying it's probably not true. Again, I've never heard of it, and I used to make drop-in RHop barrel hop-up chamber setups many years ago, or well, not many, 2 to 3 years ago, and I got a lot of positive feedback on HPA, DSG, and, you know, basically stock setups. So again, I don't think it's true. It's probably due to another variable. One Mike asks, do Sorbo pads cause higher FPS deviation? That's actually a really good question, and the answer is absolutely. When people use these massive, you know, 1/4 Sorbothane pads that are soft, like 40D as opposed to 60 or 70D, yes, you can, on very high rate of fire builds, have this situation where you get massive FPS deviation. That's one of the things that I've noticed when using Sorbothane. I do not use Sorbothane. I very rarely used it. I would use it in customer builds where they insisted on me using Sorbothane. But nowadays, I just use faucet washers, just solid rubber faucet washers off the cylinder head. And if I'm correcting angle of engagement between the piston and the piston head, you know, because I might want some weight here and there, then, you know, I'll just use steel washers or also rubber faucet washers. So yes, you can see massive FPS deviation. What I consider massive in this case is like 10, 15, 20 in shot-to-shot FPS on full auto and high rate of fire builds. That's not something that people really know about a whole lot anymore because the community has pretty much stopped using Sorbothane altogether, and for good reason. Thomas asks, what are your thoughts on precocking? Does it wear your parts more quickly? And what is less stressing for a replica, full auto or single shot? Greetings from the Netherlands. I actually really like precocking, specifically electronic precocking. There have been some concepts of mechanical precocking that utilize a delayed cutoff cam system off of the sector gear. But when we say precocking, we tend to be thinking about the electrical version of it. You know, BTC Chimera, BTC Spectre, you know, the Gate Titan. All these MOSFETs can have some form of precocking. Now, whether it technically, you know, causes more wear and tear to your system over time, I'd say marginally so. It does, maybe barely, but I don't think I've ever had a catastrophic failure that I could actually attribute to the fact that I was using precocking at that time. Now, which wears your internals down more, semi-auto or full auto? If you're comparing two completely stock guns and you just semi-auto one, then full auto the other one until something breaks, you know, Probably full auto, but maybe semi-auto. I don't really know. I couldn't tell you honestly. But semi-auto does tend to have a higher amp draw on your motor. You know, motors, when they have a startup amp draw, it's going to be higher than if it were just going to continue going. So you're going to have a spike, and then it's going to level out. And so electrically speaking, semi-auto does wear your internals, your electrical system, more so than full auto does. But full auto, you know, depending on how fast you're going, can truly wear down your system. Like say you got a 60, 75 round per second DSG, the longer you hold that trigger down, the more likely it is that you're going to have a catastrophic failure, whether it be, you know, premature engagement, or one of the gears just losing it, or one of the bearings just slipping loose, stuff like that. But you know, to kind of take it back to basics, it's long been understood in the teching community that semi-auto wears your gun down a little more quickly, just because there is a little bit more mechanical stuff going on than there is in full auto. So again, those are marginal differences there, just kind of like precocking. Does it, you know, technically wear out your system faster? Yes. Marginally. Is it significant? Probably not. So it's really just a toss-up.
Rob P asks, why are bushings so much louder than bearings? I can't ever get builds with bushings to sound good, but my builds with bearings are beautiful. I should also add that I don't use much grease due to running gate tightens.
So I love a good bearings versus bushings question. So the reason why bushings tend to be slightly louder than bearings is just because there's more friction between the axle on the gear and the bushing, the device holding it in place. Bushings are static. They're literally just there to hold the axle of the gear in place so that it can rotate and be in proper alignment with everything else it touches. So, you know, as that gear rotates, it's just rubbing up against that bushing. And if you don't have it greased, or if you don't have any sort of lubricant in there to kind of take off that heat and take off that friction, you're going to produce more sound, especially, like I said, if you use less grease. Now, with bearings, for example, they're actually rotating along with the gears, so they're kind of taking and offloading some of that stress, some of that friction, and therefore, you know, eliminating more sound of that rotational movement that the gears are doing. So, but, you know, in totality, I mean, that's like super basic. Technically, bearings are going to create less sound than bushings if shimmed appropriately. But honestly, most of my guns are, you know, have bushings in them. Very few of my guns have bearings, and you guys know they sound pretty good. The shimming is on point. So they really don't sound too much different from a gun with bearings in place. But, you know, the bearings will sound a little bit better. But if your guns sound drastically different, bushings versus bearings, it's highly likely that you actually have a shimming problem, or a greasing problem even, and less of a it's just a bearing versus a bushing problem. So I would revisit your shimming, and in regards to the grease and the lubricant, I wouldn't worry too much about having a little bit of lubricant between your bushing and your gear axle when using a gate tighten. I properly lube my gearbox shells, the axles and all the gears and the piston, the steel teeth rack on the piston. I do all that stuff, and I have fine outcomes and fine functionality with my gate tighten MOSFETs. So I would open up your gearbox shell, recheck your shimming, make sure it's good, lubricate your bushings and axles, and see how it sounds after that.
Joseph Evans asks, does spring strength affect shimming or AOE? I've done some internal mods to my rifle, but it chronos 230 FPS on .25s. I still use the stock spring. Can I just use a stronger one?
So correcting angle of engagement might have a very, very slight effect on your FPS and joule output, but I say very slight. Now, if you're seeing, after doing these upgrades that you talked about, piston, gears, motor, stuff like that, and you have a sudden massive FPS drop, like say 100, or it's what it sounds like you're having is about 100, maybe 150, there's something wrong with your compression setup. You've done something incorrectly when you've reassembled or tuned your gearbox shell to allow that massive loss of FPS. And the solution would definitely not be just to throw a stronger spring in. It very well could be, maybe you didn't actually properly get a good air seal. Maybe you need to go back and test your compression. Maybe, honestly, it could be something small. You might have just forgotten to, take the tappet plate spring and connect it to the gearbox rod that allows it to reciprocate back and forth. It could be something really, really small. You might have the incorrect length air seal nozzle in it. All kinds of things. Maybe you didn't put your hop-up chamber back together appropriately. But definitely go back, revisit all of your tuning, and make sure you did everything correctly, and then start looking at spring upgrades. But even then, if you're still not gaining this FPS loss back, you've done something incorrectly, or the person who's worked on your gun has done something incorrectly so that you to get that much of an FPS loss. It's definitely something tuning related. Alright guys, that is all the time I have today to answer questions. I apologize if I didn't get around to yours. I try to keep these videos short in totality. That means I can really only get to around 4 to 5 questions on each episode. But if I didn't answer yours, like I said, go and keep an eye on the community posts that I make, and when I make one, just ask your question down below and I'll see if I can get around to it in the next episode. If you guys haven't seen yet, I did actually finally launch the Teespring store. Currently there's only one design on there as of now. It's just my logo on a t-shirt. If you guys like it and you choose to buy it, that would greatly help out this channel. I actually do have more designs coming on the way. I have hired somebody to kind of make a couple graphic designs, obviously Airsoft related, that we can throw on some t-shirts and sell to make some money for the channel so that we can help this channel grow and I can make more interesting Airsoft content for you guys. But as always, thank you guys for watching. It means a lot to me. As always, comment, like, and obviously subscribe as well. It certainly goes a long way to help the channel. But yeah, I'm gonna have to end this video now. I will see you guys in the next video of whatever the heck I'm doing. But until then, stay tuned, techs.